and I am welcoming you all to this class. So, dear students, we have already completed the first chapter of this unit, that is the digestive system, and during study of that system, which is concerned with the anatomical aspect, we have also discussed different part of the system and how the food material is being digested in that system. So, today we shall discuss on a new topic which is very much essential to the human body. This has a main or this has a great physiological role in the human body, because once the food is digested in the alimentary canal of any vertebrate, then this food material is transported to different cells of the body, different organs of the body, and in that cells these food materials are oxidized. Okay. So, after oxidation energy is liberated, and we know for oxidation we need oxygen, and once a material is oxidized by the oxygen, immediately there is the evolution of product of evolvement of the carbon dioxide, and we know the carbon dioxide is a harmful gas, so that this gas should be eliminated from the body. So, a system is been designed in vertebrate, or a system is designed in the animals to take oxygen in a proper manner and to discharge out the carbon dioxide, so that this living body will constantly produce the energy, it will gain the energy. So, this is today's topic, that is the respiratory system. So, let us start with this one. So, what is the organs which are concerned with the respiration in vertebrates? So, I am not telling about the respiration of human. So, this class is anatomical class, and whatever discussion will be made in this class or during the completion of this unit, we shall always focus upon the structure of these organs of all the vertebrates. So, whenever the respiratory organ comes to our knowledge, or whenever the respiratory organ comes, immediately we think what is the organ which is involved in this respiration. So, in vertebrates, generally in vertebrates, so today's topic is respiratory system. So, this is respiration or respiratory system. So, in case of vertebrates, okay, so in case of vertebrates there are two types of respiratory organs, which are concerned or which are involved in respiration process. The first one is gills and second one is the lungs. We know the gills are concerned with aquatic respiration, or the animals which are aquatic in nature, they actually respire by means of gills. So, the first organ is the gill. So, gill is the organ which is actually used by the aquatic animals, that means the animals which are inhabiting in the aquatic medium, ponds, ditches, pool, or they are also present in streams like that. So, aquatic, that is marine also. And secondly, the lungs, the second one is the lungs. The lungs or the lung is an organ which is associated with aerial respiration, that means air, terrestrial, that means oxygen will directly enter into the body. So, in that case the oxygen is dissolved in water, so that the animal will take the water, and from this water this animal will extract the oxygen. So, this is gill. So, this is found in some animals and this is found in aerial animals, but both may occur in the same animal. Some animals are there where both the system work, that is gill is also working, that is gill is working and lung is also working. And in case of vertebrates, or some vertebrates are there where skin may be respiratory besides the gill, besides the lungs, the skin also act as respiratory organ. For example, the anurans, the frogs. Some fishes are there which are aquatic, or in case of aquatic turtles, the vascular rectum or cloaca is also respiratory. That means what I am telling, the most important fundamental organ for respiration are gill and lungs. Besides that, in case of amphibians, the skin is also involved in respiration. In case of turtles, the cloaca is also involved in respiration, and also in case of this turtle, the vascular rectum is also involved in respiration. Besides this, some vertebrates are there where accessory respiratory organs are also there which are functioning for respiration. So, these are different type of organs, but basically you should remember that these gills and lungs are the basic organ for respiration. This is found in aquatic and this is found in terrestrial vertebrates. So, now we shall see. So, what is actually their working? So, in both the kinds, whether this is gill respiration or whether this is the aerial respiration, in both the respiration, two conditions are essential, two conditions are required. Firstly, the respiratory organs must have a rich blood supply. The respiratory organ will get sufficient blood with very thin moist epithelium covering the blood vessel. Then that blood should contain the carbon dioxide. Whenever this blood vessel will come in contact with the oxygen, so oxygen will gradually enter into the blood vessel and carbon dioxide will come out from the blood vessel. So, you just imagine, for example, this is a blood vessel. So, first criteria, so this is a blood vessel, okay. So, inside this the blood is there, this is the blood, so blood is there. So, this is the thin membrane. So, inside the blood there is the carbon dioxide, outer to that there is the oxygen. So, there is one exchange between the oxygen and carbon dioxide, okay. The carbon dioxide will come out and oxygen will enter. So, this is the first requirement, that means in both kinds of respiration, whether this is a gill respiration, whether this is a pulmonary respiration or lungs respiration, firstly the respiratory organs must have a rich blood supply with very thin and moist epithelium covering the blood vessel, so that the blood vessels throw into close contact with the environment, whether this is water or air, so that one exchange can be done. Secondly, once the blood gets the blood, then what happens? Secondly, the organs of respiration, the blood vessels should be reduced to the thin capillaries which expose a large surface area to the environment, so that blood is brought into the close contact with the water or air in the respiratory organ. So, most important thing is that once this blood, you just see, so this blood is now filled with carbon dioxide, okay. So, once this is exchanged, this blood will now reach in oxygen, so that that blood will give to, or this blood will supply to different organ and this organ will get the oxygen. So, that this membrane must be thin and this must be having some capillaries, so that this will provide maximum area for exchange of these gases, okay. So, now come to the next one. So, exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs in two places. So, now you imagine, you just think this is the one place where the carbon dioxide and oxygen is exchanged, and another thing is that, so exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs at two places, that is in the respiratory organ and in the tissue, okay. So, this is the organ, you just imagine. So, for example, this is the vessel. So, this is the respiratory organ. So, this is now getting the oxygen. So, now for example, this is the tissue. So, once this oxygen will give in to the tissue, so immediately the tissue will give the carbon dioxide to the blood and the blood will give the oxygen to the tissue. That means in two places, at two places there is the exchange. So, once this is environment and blood, and second the blood and tissue. So, this is known as external respiration and this is known as internal respiration. So, during internal respiration, the tissue respiration, that is the internal or tissue respiration, exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs between blood and tissue of the body, and during external respiration, gaseous exchange takes place between blood and external environment. That means, if this is the aerial respiration, that is within the lungs and the aquatic respiration within the lungs, and if this is the aquatic respiration, then water and gill surface, okay. So, these are the most important criteria for respiration. That means so from this I can say that the respiratory organ are so designed that they will very much efficient to bring the oxygen to the tissue and collect the carbon dioxide from the tissue, and that can be eliminated to the outside. So, this is just a brief idea regarding the respiration. So, in lower aquatic vertebrates, the respiratory organs are not connected with, again another point comes. So, in lower aquatic vertebrates, the respiratory organs are not connected to the olfactory organs, you know. So, for example, you consider your case. In your case, you have a mouth, that is the mouth leads to the buccal cavity, and above that in the buccal cavity having a roof. and that roof is known as palate. And above the palate there is a passage that is known as nasal chamber. So nasal chamber and the buccal cavity, they actually unite at one place, that is called a pharynx. So from pharynx two aperture starts. One is aperture for transportation of the gas and one for the aperture which is transporting the food material. So there is a connection. But in lower vertebrates, what happens? The respiratory organ is not connected to the olfactory organ, but in air breathing vertebrates there is a close association between these two. In case of Coanecthes, a group of teleost fish, bony fish, so it is a subclass of teleost. So in case of some bony fishes, there is Coanecthes. There is a direct connection between the olfactory and respiratory organs, in which the internal layers, that means the internal layer, that is the where the air will be given, internal layers or choani open from the nasal cavity into the buccal cavity. So that is a common passage for transportation of the food material and the air. But it is only in tetrapod that air enters through the nasal cavity into the buccal cavity and then into the lungs. Okay, so this is very much designed in case of the tetrapods. So this is a brief idea regarding the introduction of the respiration. Now let us discuss the organ for respiration, that is first gill. So we shall now discuss detail about the gills. Okay. So I have told you that gill is the organ for respiration in case of aquatic animal. So gills are used for aquatic respiration found in fishes and amphibians. Again we know fishes are completely aquatic in nature, but amphibians are actually dual habitant. That means once in their lifetime or once in their larval stage they actually remain in water, and some amphibia also remain in water, but the adult actually remain or adult actually dwell at the terrestrial medium. So amphibians also possess this type of gills along with that of the fishes. So gills are the aquatic organ or aquatic respiration organ found in fishes and amphibians. Secondly, the gills are not found in case of amniotes, that is higher vertebrates. And what the gill actually does? Besides exchange of gases, the surface of the gills, that is the beside exchange of gases at the surface of the gills, that means gill surface is involved in exchange of gases. These gills are also involved in another step or another process, that is salts are also eliminated from the gill surfaces in marine teleost. In case of marine bony fishes, so whenever there is more and more salt in the blood, that salt actually comes to the surface of the gill and that salts are being eliminated from the gills. So not only gill performs the respiration, but also these gills are involved in elimination of excess salt in case of marine teleost. Okay. So now it is observed that these gills are of two types on the basis of their position, where they are present. So if they are present to the outside of the body, this is known as external gill, and if they are present inside the body, this is known as internal gill. So gills are of two types. So they are external gill and the internal gill. So let us start with the external gill. So we shall now discuss about the external gill. Okay. So that means the gills are present outside the body. So this is the external gills. Okay. So in larvae of most amphibians, the integument covering the outer surface of visceral arches gives off branching outgrowths which are tufts of filaments and in respiratory nature. Again the very important sentence, in larvae of most of the amphibians. So whenever the amphibia, that means the larvae of amphibia are produced, at that time how they respire? What happens? The integument covering the outer surface of visceral arches. For example, this is one larva, we know, for example, this is one larva, okay, this is the tadpole larva of amphibia, and we know there are the visceral arches. So during our study of evolution of visceral arches, we have know or we have studied that more than 5 pair of gill arches are there. The first one is mandibular, then the hyoid, then the branchial gill arches are there. So, these are the gill arches. So, what happens? So, in larvae of most amphibians, the integument, the skin or covering, the outer surface of the visceral arches, these arches, so these are covered by the these arches are covered by the what? The integument. They actually gives off, they actually develop some branches or outgrowths which are tough filaments and are respiratory in nature. So, this part will develop some structure, tough structure, and these are the gills. I shall show you detail in picture. So, they are actually ectodermal in origin, because I have told that this is the integumental derivative. Thus, these are ectodermal origin. In some tailed amphibians, so this is the larva of the amphibians, for example, larva of frogs and toads, or that is also called as anurans. Okay. But in some tailed amphibians, for example, salamander, where tail is there, external gills are present in adult. So, external gills and gill slits are retained, present throughout the life. Throughout the life, the gills are present. But in some tailed and tailless amphibians, they are lost during metamorphosis and hence known as larval gills. So, from this discussion, it is revealed that the gills are the primary respiratory organ in case of what? The amphibians which are external nature. So, if I discuss about if I tell about the external gills are the most important feature or most important respiratory organ in case of what? The larvae of amphibia or some tailed amphibia possess this type of external gills. And what are they? They are nothing but they are the derivative of outgrowth of the what? Integument, and they are ectodermal in origin. Okay. So, they form a tough, that means they form a tough filamentar structure, and that constitute the respiratory function, or that conduct the respiratory function, hence this is known as external gill. So, now come to the second point. In the embryo, generally we know in the embryo, usually 5 pairs of, in case of that frog, then in case of that amphibia, in case of embryo, usually 5 pairs of pharyngeal pouches arises, of which the second, third and fourth perforated and open to the exterior. Okay. In most of the amphibian, these gill clefts are closed during metamorphosis. The third, the fourth and fifth, the visceral arches bear the external gills, okay, in case of amphibians. And these external gills are in direct contact with the water, and an exchange of gases occurs through their surface epithelium. So, you just imagine. So, these are the external gills. So, if this is the aquatic medium, so whenever water comes in contact with these gills, then these gills are conducting the process of respiration. So, external gills are coming in direct contact with the water, and an exchange of gases generally occurs through the surface of the external gill or through the epithelial lining of the external gill. So, by this way these gills are very much helpful. So, later on, in case of that amphibians, later on the operculum arises and cover these gills, that is gill clefts, and gills externally in tadpole become enclosed and opercular chamber lined with ectoderm. Okay. These external gills soon degenerate, then they are degenerate, and a new set of gills called internal gills develop from the same visceral arches. Okay. So, a new set of gills are developed. So, you just imagine. So, first of all from that visceral arches, the external. So, these are the external gills. So, these visceral arches, or from these visceral arches external gills are developed, but immediately this is closed by the operculum, and from this point visceral arches again internal gills are developed. So, first external, then internal gills develop. So, these external gills are soon degenerated and new set of gills, that is called as internal gills, develop from the same visceral arches. Okay. However, these internal gills and the operculum are not homologous with those of the fishes. So you have heard this word operculum. So operculum is the covering of the gills of fishes, but that operculum of fishes is not similar with that of the operculum of the amphibians. Okay, so they are completely different. So external gills, now come to the next point. The external gills are rare in fishes. So what I have told you that the amphibian larva possess the external gills, but exceptionally some amphibians possess the external gill. Otherwise, this is a common feature of the larva of amphibia. In contrast to that, in case of fishes, the external gills, because you know fishes are aquatic animal, so external gills, though rare in fishes, but are found in some larval forms of lamprey, larva of Polypterus has one pair of external gills. In them the gills are present. Again we know about the dipnoi. We know the dipnoi are known as lungfishes. So dipnoi, for example Lepidosiren, have 4 pairs of filamentous external gills which are attached to the outer edge of the branchial arches. The external gills of fishes disappear in the adult. Okay, whenever the fish become adult, the external gills are not present. So in case of fishes, the external gills are not found. So gills may be pectinate in them. They may be pectinate, bipectinate, dendritic or leaf-like. And the most important thing is that a gill has a narrow central axis. I shall show you picture. So the gill has a narrow central axis. So for example, this is the gill. For example, this is the gill. So this gill has a narrow central axis. Okay, bearing double row of filaments. These are richly vascular by aortic arches. The gills are supplied with the aortic arches bringing blood, and gill slits are not found. In case of them, the gill slits are not found. So now from this picture you can know what is the position of the external gill you see. So this is the elasmobranch, so projecting internal gill filaments. So this is the shark, okay, this is the long fishes you see. So this is external gill. So this is the long fish, the external 1, 2, 3, 4. So external gills having present in them. So in case of larva of frog, this is the tadpole larva. So tadpole larva also possess, these are the external gill. So in case of axolotl larva, you see these are the, so this is a tailed amphibian. So this is the tailed amphibian itself. This is also tailed amphibian. So but this is one anuran. So this is not tailed, and this is not a tailed amphibian. This is the larva. So this is the larva, and this is the axolotl larva of the salamander, and here the salamander itself the adult. So salamander adult, that is the tailed amphibia, that possess the external gill, along with that its larva also possess the external gill. So these are the gills. Actually these gills are directly coming in contact with the water, so that the gaseous exchange occur between the gills and the aquatic medium. So this is all about the external gill. So now come to the internal gill. So this is all about, so till now I actually covered detail about the external gill. So only one line you can remember, that these are the gills which are derived at the visceral arch region, and these are the derivation of the integument. Okay, so they are directly coming in contact with the aquatic medium and making or performing the exchange of gases. So now come to the internal, or this is also known as true gill. So this is all about the true gill or internal gill. So internal gill. So these gills are very much common in case of fishes. Okay, internal gill. So internal gills are the characteristic of fishes, fish having the internal gill, and you have also seen that. We know at the head region a pair of operculum present. So this operculum is enclosing the gills. So these are placed in the gill clefts or gill slits and attached to the visceral arches. So you just see. So for example, this is the fish. Okay. So this is the fish, and this is known as operculum. This is the eye. So now if I detach the operculum, bring out the operculum, now you have seen that these are the gills. So these are the gills. Okay. So gills are present here. So this is the visceral arch region. Okay, pharyngeal region. So these are placed in the gill slits. Okay. So there is a slit is present and attached to the visceral arches. In amniotes or in amniotic, what amniotes, embryonic pharyngeal pouches do not communicate the outside through the gill slits in adult. Gills are not found in them. So now come to the structure. So these gills develop on the wall of gill pouches or gill arches. So gills are developed from arch, that is gill arch, okay, that is the cartilaginous structure. A gill is formed of two rows of series of gill filaments or gill lamella developed from the epithelium covering the, that is known as interbranchial septum on both sides. Interbranchial septum extends towards from the cartilaginous arch. Okay. So what I am telling, a gill is formed of two rows of series of gill filaments and they are known as gill lamella. So for example, you see, so this is the arch and here see, so this is the gill lamella, you see. So this is the gill lamella. So this is very much rich in, so this is one part and this is for example another part. So this is the gill. So this is the gill lamella. So the interbranchial septum extends towards or outwards from the cartilaginous arch to form the gill. So now a single gill or a single row of gill filaments on one side of interbranchial branch or septum form a half gill called hemibranch or demibranch. An interbranchial septum with two hemibranchs anterior and posterior forms a complete gill or hollow branch. So this is the hemibranch and the hollow branch. So these are, so gills are supplied with blood vessels associated with aortic arches so that carbon dioxide in the blood may be exchanged for dissolved oxygen in the water. So this is the most important feature or nature of the gill. So in case of sharks and rays, they have generalized structure of gill. So this is gill. So now I am covering in which organ or in which vertebrate the gills are present and how they are functioning. So this is the anatomy. So sharks and rays have generalized structure of gills. In higher bony fishes, the interbranchial septum is lacking so that the hemibranchs on the anterior and posterior part of each branch or each branchial arch are no longer separated from each other. Furthermore, the gills aperture are no longer open separately to the outside. Instead, the gills are enclosed in a single chamber and covered externally by a large operculum which opens and closes posteriorly to permit water to pass to and the outside. In most of the fishes, there are 4 pairs of functional gills. How much? 4 pairs of functional gills. Okay. So they are actually covered by operculum. So now you see these are the structure of the gill. So for example, this is one teleost. You see, so here this is the gill arch. So this is the gill arch which actually, so this is the gill arch and this is known as, this part is known as gill recur. So now this is the artery, so which actually bringing blood to that, and this is the known as efferent artery and this is known as efferent artery. So this is the remnant of the septum. So this is the septum. So this is a demibranch. So this is a demibranch and this is a demibranch, so that this is a complete hollow branch. So this is a gill, structure of the gill, and the sides are the lamella. Okay. So now you see, this is for example in this picture I want to show you how these gills are functioning. So you see, for example, this is the mouth. So now you see this is the mouth, you see in this picture. So this is the mouth. So now when the mouth is open, so now water is entered. So now this water is entering to the gill. So this is the one side of gill and this is another side of gills. Okay. So now this water entered the gill. So now in this gill, this gills, the water is coming in contact with the gills. So what happens? So this water contain oxygen, these gills contain carbon dioxide, so that there is an exchange between the oxygen and carbon dioxide and the gill region, so that this after exchange this operculum will open, so that the water will come out. So this is the process. So what happens? Mouth opens, water enters, then the operculum are closed, this water comes in contact with the gill. After exchange, the gill opens, mouth closed, so that water comes out. So this is the process of gill respiration. Okay. So now mechanism of respiration that I have shown you in the picture. So what I am telling now, during respiration, that is gill respiration, the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered and the mouth is open. Then the water rushes into the gill to fill the greatly expanded buccal cavity. The mouth is now closed and the pharynx contracts. So, the water then enters the gill pouches and goes out after considerable gaseous exchange through the gill slits. So, this is the mechanism of gill respiration. So, till now I discussed about the aquatic respiration, that is by external gill and internal gill. Let us take a break for the session, then we shall start again the new part of respiration.